If you're of a certain age, you know this scene. You've just put a DVD into the player. Before you can get to the movie you paid for, you're hit with a grainy, dramatic public service announcement. The message was simple, hammering home a single point with all the subtlety of a brick. Digital piracy is theft. It's morally identical to stealing a physical object. The campaign was everywhere, an inescapable sermon from the Church of Copyright. But here's the thing. That iconic, aggressive, in-your-face font used in the campaign, it was a pirated clone of a licensed typeface called FF Confidential. The very people lecturing the world about intellectual property theft were, ironically, using stolen intellectual property to do it. This single, hypocritical detail is a perfect entry point into one of the most complex and misunderstood conflicts of the digital age. It's a story that's far more than just theft. It's a story about preservation, access, rebellion, and a 50-year-old digital underground that's waging a quiet war against some of the world's biggest corporations. So let's ask the forbidden question. Is piracy a good thing? The answer is not what you think. Let's start with the argument you already know, the one pushed by Hollywood, major software companies, and the music industry. From their perspective, the answer is a simple and resounding no. According to industry data, digital piracy costs the US economy alone over $29 billion a year. The vast majority of that, around 80%, comes from illegal streaming of movies and TV shows. They argue this isn't a victimless crime. It's money taken directly from the pockets of writers, artists, developers, and crew members. It devalues creative work and reduces the incentive to fund new, ambitious projects. This is the stealing a car argument. It's clean, simple, and legally sound. Copyright law exists to protect creators and give them a temporary monopoly on their work to encourage innovation. Piracy breaks that law. Case closed. Right? Well, that's where the story gets complicated, because the people who legally buy the products are often the ones who get punished the most. To combat piracy, companies developed something called digital rights management, or DRM. In theory, it's a digital lock that ensures only legitimate buyers can access the content. In reality, it has become a nightmare for paying customers. Take the 2014 racing game, The Crew. You could buy it, own the disc, and install it on your console. But to play it, even the single-player parts, you had to be connected to the company's servers. This is called Always Online DRM. In April 2024, the publisher Ubisoft decided to shut those servers down, forever. The game that thousands of people had paid for became an unplayable digital brick. Ubisoft went a step further. They began actively revoking the licenses from users' libraries, effectively reaching into their homes and taking back the product they sold. Investigations later revealed the game had a hidden offline mode, but the DRM prevented anyone from ever using it. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over 54 games with Always Online DRM have been rendered permanently unplayable after their servers were shut down. Suddenly, piracy takes on a new role. It's no longer just theft, it's preservation. For many of these dead games, the only way to experience them today is through a pirated, cracked version where the destructive DRM has been surgically removed. The illegal copy becomes the only one that truly works. And the problems don't stop there. DRM often makes legal games run worse. Independent tests on the infamous Denuvo DRM showed it can increase a game's boot time by 400%. Legitimate customers pay full price for a degraded experience, while pirates get a superior product for free. This is the central paradox. The tools created to fight piracy often end up being the best argument for it. The justification for piracy moves beyond preservation when industries create problems that pirates are better at solving. Remember when streaming was the promised land? Everything you wanted, all in one place for a reasonable price. That dream is dead. Today, favorite shows are scattered across a dozen different services, creating subscription fatigue. The monthly bill can easily top $100. The result? Piracy is surging. Visits to piracy websites have jumped 12% since 2019. People are tired of paying more for less convenience. But the most compelling case for piracy as a service comes from two very different worlds: professional software and foreign films. Take Adobe Creative Cloud, the essential toolkit for artists and designers. A full subscription costs over $600 a year. For a student in a developing country or a freelance artist starting out, that price is an impossible barrier. Piracy becomes a tool for education and economic mobility. It allows people to learn valuable skills and build a portfolio, which can eventually lead them to a career where they can afford to buy the software legally. Even Adobe seems to understand this unofficial "try before you thrive" system, with a former executive once admitting that high piracy rates in markets like China were good for building long-term market share. Then there's the world of subtitles. If you've ever watched a foreign film or a niche TV show, you've likely benefited from the work of underground subtitle groups. These global communities of volunteers translate content into dozens of languages, often faster and more accurately than official releases. They make global culture accessible to everyone, breaking down language barriers that billion-dollar studios can't or won't. This isn't theft, it's a global act of cultural distribution. To understand how all this is possible, you have to look at the hidden ecosystem behind it. Modern piracy didn't start with the internet. It began in the 1970s and 80s on dial-up bulletin board systems, or BBSs. This was the birthplace of the Warez Scene, a highly structured, competitive subculture of crackers and distributors. Groups with names like Fairlight and Skid Row operated like secret societies. They competed to be the first to crack and release a new game, not for profit, but for reputation and bragging rights within their community. They announced their releases with NFO files, simple text documents filled with elaborate ASCII art, manifestos, and technical notes. It was a culture of pride and craftsmanship that continues to this day. Today, that craftsmanship has evolved. Meet FitGirl. FitGirl isn't a cracker, but a repacker. She takes huge 140 gigabyte AAA games and shrinks them down to a fraction of their original size, sometimes as small as 40 gigabytes. This makes them accessible to people with slow internet connections or limited data caps. Her repacks are legendary, a gold standard in the piracy world for their reliability and efficiency. She processes over 60 gigabytes of data every single day. But the most fascinating figure in modern piracy is a lone wolf cracker known only as Empress. In the world of game cracking, one DRM stands above all others in its difficulty: Denuvo. For years, cracking it was nearly impossible. Then came Empress. By 2024, she became a virtual monopoly. It's estimated she is responsible for cracking 95% of all Denuvo protected games. She doesn't work for free. Empress crowdfunds her cracks, charging $500 per game. Her followers on Telegram eagerly pay to see the next big title liberated. Her NFO files are not just release notes, they are fiery political manifestos, railing against woke culture and corporate practices. She is a perfect symbol of modern piracy, technically brilliant, politically charged, and operating completely outside the traditional system. When she took a break in 2021, the release of cracked AAA games nearly ground to a halt. One person holds that much power. So, after all this, is piracy a good thing? To call it good is too simple. Piracy does cause economic harm. It operates in a legal and moral gray area, and the community isn't a utopia. It has its own share of malware, scams, and toxic figures. But to call it pure evil is to ignore the reality of why millions of people do it. Piracy has become a direct response to the failures of legitimate industries. It's a symptom, not the disease. The disease is charging students $600 a year for essential software. Piracy is the symptom. The disease is selling a game that's designed to self-destruct. Piracy is the symptom. The disease is fracturing the streaming landscape into a dozen expensive subscriptions. Piracy is the symptom. The disease is letting cultural works like foreign films remain inaccessible to a global audience. Piracy is the symptom. The digital underground, from the early BBS pioneers to modern figures like FitGirl and Empress, isn't just stealing. They are acting as archivists, librarians, accessibility advocates, and quality control. They provide a service, whether it's a better performing product or access to knowledge that would otherwise be locked away. The war on piracy has been raging for half a century. And the corporations are no closer to winning because they continue to fight the symptom while refusing to cure the disease. As long as ownership is treated like a temporary rental, as long as culture is locked behind paywalls and geographic borders, and as long as paying customers are treated with suspicion, piracy will not just exist, it will be necessary.